Now, if you're anything like me, you've been jumping into Dead by Daylight and thoroughly enjoying the experience. You get to be part of the cat and mouse chase of running away from the killer, or maybe you get to punish the people that are in the game with you when you are the murderer yourself. But there's a lot of depth to Dead by Daylight that you don't necessarily get on the first go through. And in the first 100 hours, you start to realize all the technical aspects of the game that you can use to make yourself better and to win more games. So today's video, I'm gonna cover 13 tips that will help you improve your survivor gameplay in Dead by Daylight, that will help you work more with your teammates and come out alive when you put yourself into the scenario where you're being chased down by a filthy killer. These are tips that you can apply right after watching this video that will instantly improve your ability to get away from the killer, waste their time, and come out alive. And I think one of the biggest challenges of Dead by Daylight is the actual value of winning is a little amorphous and difficult to pin down. It's easy to think that simply escaping as a survivor is the win, but actually just getting a single pip or ranking up is a victory in and of itself, even if you die. So these 13 tips will focus on being a very effective teammate inside the match, talking about how you can work with your teammates to pull out a victory. And you'll notice that right after this video, you'll get a huge boost in your skill set. So without further ado, let's jump right into the list. Tip number 1 is something that I think every survivor should have in the back of their heads at all times, and that is to ensure that every single moment in Dead by Daylight is spent doing something valuable. Too many times I see survivors hiding behind a wall when the killer's not actually next to them, or spending a lot of time waiting when the killer is chasing someone else. If you are not currently the target for the killer, you need to be spending every moment doing something useful, which means you should basically be inside of one of these categories. Either you're playing defense, which means that you're running the killer or you're getting people off of hooks and healing them, or you're on a generator progressing your ability to escape from the game. Or maybe you're even looking for an objective like a hex on the map that you're looking for to destroy. You want to make sure that you're always providing some kind of benefit to your team and making sure that you're not sitting around wasting that valuable time by not accomplishing anything. Tip number 2 is an important one, and one that will help you go from green ranks all the way up to red ranks, and that is learning to push through the ever popular Hex Ruin. Hex Ruin is a hex that is kind of a staple for almost every killer in the game, and what it does is activate a dull totem on the map, and while this hex is active, your good checks will regress generator progress. Now, what I see a lot of new survivors doing is when they run into Ruin, they run away and start looking for the totem. And sometimes, especially on maps like Hawkins, it can be really difficult to find Ruin spawns that are in really great spots. And so what you need to do is learn to push through the Ruin to get the generators done anyway. In fact, most of the time, if you see someone run off to get the totem, everyone else should be staying on a generator and progressing it. Because even if you're only getting good checks and regressing the generator, you can still finish the generator all the way through. And as you get better at the game and getting more accurate with hitting great skill checks, which will keep the generator progress moving forward, even with Ruin active, you start to be able to move through what is a very common obstacle for survivors. Tip number 3 is when you are downed, you need to make a quick decision whether you're going to recover or reposition where you got downed. And when you're in doubt, you should almost always lean towards recovering. This happens a lot where survivors will get downed and then spend a lot of time crawling around looking for a new place to sit. And when someone runs over to try and pick you up, you haven't recovered your HP enough for them to quickly get you up when they're making an aggressive move. So you have to decide whether you're going to reposition to somewhere. Now, some examples of what be useful for repositioning is if you feel like the killer is going to come pick you up soon and you see a pallet nearby and you know that a teammate is in range, what you can do is reposition to the pallet so that when you get picked up, someone can slam the pallet down and save you. Or if you're in a position where you feel like someone can get you a flashlight save when you're being picked up. If you see no teammates nearby and there's not really anywhere to crawl to, you should immediately start recovering, because if you get slugged by the killer, which means that they're leaving you on the ground, if you spend time recovering, you'll allow someone to come by and actually get you up. Always try to recover if you get the opportunity. Tip number 4 is to Practice looking behind you as you run. This sounds simple, but is actually a bit of an art form. You have to be able to look behind you to watch what the killer is doing, but you also have to make sure you're not running into things like a chicken with your head cut off. A lot of times, finding the right balance of looking back, knowing where the killer is, and looking forward to see where you're going is worth the time, because it'll allow you to move quickly and efficiently through the space that you are going. And it leads perfectly into tip number 5. As you get better at the game, you'll learn to interact with the killer in a 1v1 cat and mouse scenario. So if you go for a vault and you see that they react and start going around the wall, change course and don't vault. You are basically playing this back and forth with the killer. So if you see that they're going to respect a pallet you're about to throw, don't throw the pallet. If you go towards a window and they back up and go around the wall, don't vault the window and instead go somewhere else. By learning to look behind you and watch what the killer does, you can gain a lot of ground by reacting to how they change their move. Tip number 6 is keep in mind the killer can only chase one person at a time. This means that if you see him currently chasing someone, you should make your move. Whether this move is to stay on a gen or go for a teammate that is on a hook, if you know that they are chasing someone else, you are in no danger of being caught. So you have to use this time to actually make quick moves and be daring, knowing that they're chasing someone else. Tip number 7 is to hug walls as tightly as you can without running into anything. I see a lot of people take wide arcs around corners, and every inch that you can get when in a chase is valuable. So hug those walls as tightly as you can without getting clipped or caught on anything, because the overall distance is shorter and you'll be able to keep yourself ahead of the killer in good time. Tip number 8 is an important one, and I actually don't see a lot of people doing this enough. Practice your fast vault. There's 3 speeds that you can vault over a window at: slow, medium, and fast. Medium comes when you are running and you don't line up with the window just right, or you don't hit it at the right time. And a fast vault is when you can quickly vault over the window by hitting the window at the right angle and hitting the button at the right time. You should jump into a game and practice this as much as you can, because a lot of times if you medium vault when you could have fast vault, it means that you're going to take a hit from the killer that you could have avoided. Your hitbox will linger longer and you're more exposed for getting hit by the killer, and this includes one-shot downs like chainsaws. So when you can, practice fast vaulting. The easiest way to remember it is to try and line up with the center of the window the best that you can, and then hit the button at the absolute last second. You will get a prompt down below that changes from vault to running vault, and when you see this, you can hit it and get over the window. But generally, just keep in the back of your mind that if you line up with the window in the center of it at the best that you can, you're running and you hit it at the last possible second, you will most likely get the fast vault, but experiment with what works for you. Tip number 9 is a bit of a controversial one, but I want to throw this out there. Don't be afraid to throw pallets. There's a little bit of this elitist mentality within the community, especially with really skilled survivors, that if you throw pallets early, you're wasting. This can be true, but a lot of this is just generally people being very braggy about how long they can loop a killer around an area before having to use the pallets. Now, there are some pallets in the game that are referred to as God pallets, which means that they're just really good and it can be looped on for a long time. But depending on where you are in the game and how many pellets are left, it can be fine to throw a pallet right when you get to it, because you are wasting the killer's time. And realistically, if you're with a good group of survivors, getting 5 generators done doesn't actually take that long. So if you throw a couple pallets because you want to extend the chase for as long as possible, and this means that your team can get 1 or 2 generators in the process, don't feel bad about throwing a pallet right away. You have to be able to waste the killer's time. And as you get better at the game, you will be able to extend the loops longer and longer without having to throw a pallet, but don't let the community berate you into not throwing pallets because you're wasting them. What's worse is getting caught right away without having to burn the killer's time. In fact, it can be just fine if you ran and burned every pallet on the map, because if your other 3 teammates were actually doing generators, by the time you throw the last pallet, the gates will probably be open anyway. Tip number 10 is an important one, and this is something you should think about every time you get to a generator. Have an escape plan in your mind always. So when you land on a generator or you're going to do an objective like a totem, look around and decide, where would I go if the killer showed up right now? Especially now that Ghostface has been added and we have a lot more stealth killers in the game, like Wraith and Tier 1 Myers, you have to be careful that sometimes the killer is just going to happen upon you right away, and you have to know where you're going to go if that happens. If you're on a generator that is in the middle of a barren wasteland, there's no pallets, there's no windows, you're going to get caught with nowhere to go. But if you look at your escape plan before the killer shows up, you'll be able to react immediately when they do and get to an area that you can actually use to loot them for a good amount of time. Think to yourself when you get to a generator, I'm going to go to this pallet and try and work it as long as I can if the killer does show up. And this can be a lifesaver when you get stuck. Tip number 11 is you can see if you are affected by other perks by the icon in the corner of your screen. Things like borrowed time, which when a survivor unhooks you, you can take a free hit without going down. Will make it, which means that a teammate will heal you faster if they just unhooked you, and all the killer debuffs as well. So keep an eye out for the icons that appear in the bottom right corner of the screen, letting you know when you have these benefits. Specifically borrowed time, because that means that you know that you can take a free shot before running away, and sometimes that can save you and the person that unhooked you as well. Tip number 12 is an important one, and that is to keep track of generators that are currently being worked on, and try to hard focus on generators until they're actually completed. I see a lot of survivors that will see the killer come by, run away to the entire other side of the map, and then start a brand new generator. And they keep doing this over and over and never actually finish a generator that has progress on it. Make sure that if you get chased away from a generator, you try to work your way back to it to finish it, so you actually get that out of the way without having to start a new generator, and especially if they kick it and it starts regressing and you lose all that progress. And tip number 13 is a big one. Be wary of getting into 3-gen scenarios. So what is a 3-gen scenario? There are 7 generators on the map, and you have to fix 5 of them to get out. This means that when you have 1 generator left to do, there are 3 generators on the map that you can choose from. A 3-gen scenario is when you only have 3 generators left, and they're all right next to each other. So what you want to think about as you start the game is try to spread out the generators that you're fixing. In fact, going for the hardest generators first at the start of the game when there's more pallets up and a lot more opportunities for looping is a great idea. Look for generators that are in the middle of the map, that are really easy defensible areas, that when the killer is distracted at the beginning of the game, you can get those hard generators done quickly. You don't want to leave yourself in a position where you're doing generators right next to each other, and then when you have 1 generator left to get, all the 3 that are left on the map are literally within a stone's throw away, and the killer can just police them back and forth, and you won't be able to get much progress on them. So think about what generators you're doing and when, and try to get the harder ones done first, so that when you get to the end of the game, the generators are far apart and they can't defend all of them at once. This will prevent you from getting into really difficult late game scenarios where the killer can just go back and forth and patrol and prevent you from finishing the game.
And that's it for 13 tips to instantly improve at Dead by Daylight. I want to take a moment to sincerely thank you for watching this video and being here with me. If you did like the video, do me a favor and hit that like button down below, because when you do, the YouTube algorithm starts to do magical things that helps this video get seen by more people. If you like my content, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon, because for some reason, if you don't, you won't actually be notified if I put out new content. On top of that, if you want to come hang out with me on my live stream, twitch.tv/drybear, if you want to come say hi. That does it for this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.